Chapter 3. Cece. It had been a few days since the police incident at school. It was the weekend now. A time to relax at home and create lesson plans. "Cece, you're coming out with us tonight. We're going dancing." Or not, I sighed as I heard my sister yell through my door. "I don't want to, Mel. You always get so drunk that Oliver and I have to carry you home." I pulled my bedroom door open to find her standing in the hallway. "I don't ever get that drunk," she crossed her arms. "I'm not giving you a choice. You need to have some fun in your life, sis." "I have fun in my life. I work with and teach children every day. That's fun. Right now I just need time to relax." "Get a drink or two in you and you'll be very relaxed. Now put something nice on. Oliver will be here soon." She paused and sighed. "We will probably have an extra guest too, much to my annoyance." "Who?" I asked in surprise. "A really annoying guy we met a few days ago who is just obsessed with me. Oliver thinks it's hilarious, so he invited the guy to come with us," Mel hissed between clenched teeth. "I swear I could kill him sometimes. It's like he doesn't care this guy could be a serial rapist." "You don't mean that, Mel. Oliver is very sweet and probably the truest friend anyone could ever have. Besides, he is smart. He would never put us in harm's way," I scolded her. "I mean, he is a goody two-shoes when it comes to you. Do me a favor. Don't tell him he's just true friend material. You'll break his heart," she snickered. "He is an amazing friend. He's like family," I asked, confused. "Ouch. Never mind. Just get dressed." She walked off, and I changed into a casual maxi dress. It was my favorite color, white, with big pink flowers all over it. It was not a dress for clubbing, but I didn't really want to go, so I figured I would wear something comfortable. Then I went to the bathroom and clipped my long strawberry blonde hair back. I just wanted to keep it out of my face. It still hung down my back in a simple but pretty way. While looking in the mirror, I noticed the dark circles under my deep blue eyes, but just shrugged it off. I didn't care enough to put makeup on. The last step I took to get ready for the warm night was slipping on a very comfortable pair of sandals. No makeup, nothing fancy. I would just be myself. I don't care if people looked at me funny or if I ended up getting surrounded by ridiculously beautiful, fully dressed up women. "Come on, Cece, it's time to go. You better be ready," I heard Mel yell from the first floor of our home. Our parents were very good at managing money, which meant that they could afford nice things, like a small guest house to complement their very large home. It was the 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom guest house that Mel and I rented from them. It gave us our own space, and we paid our own bills without the hassle and danger of being too far away. I made my way downstairs and found 3 bodies waiting for me at the front door. Mel, Oliver, and a stranger. "That's what you're wearing?" Mel rolled her eyes. "It looks like you're going to a casual brunch or something." "Well, it's more comfortable than what you're wearing," I mentioned to her tight skinny jeans and sparkly tight teal shirt. "Not to mention those high heels." "Don't be jealous. You know my ass looks great in these jeans," Mel teased. "Well, Cece, I think you look beautiful," Oliver said quietly. I turned a bright smile in his direction. "Thank you, Oliver. You look very handsome yourself," I exclaimed after getting a good look at him. He had a short-sleeved button-up on and jeans, but it was very rare he wore short sleeves, and it made his figure more pronounced than I had ever noticed. Oliver had always been very tall, but when he was young, he was always very skinny. He got picked on a lot, but Mel would always defend him. At one point, he got sick of the bullying and started to weight train. It had been years, and he was 25 now and very buff, but he hid it well beneath long sleeves and loose-fitting shirts. In this outfit, though, I could see every muscle. "Have you been going to the gym more?" I asked, surprised. "Every once in a blue moon, but not more than usual," he answered, blushing slightly, rubbing the back of his neck as his eyes darted away from me. He had never been good with compliments. "Oh, dear Lord," Mel sighed. "Don't give him too much attention. He might faint." The sarcasm dripped from Mel's words. Oliver glared at her for a moment before turning back to me. "This is Colt, by the way." He turned to the young man with dark hair and dark eyes, and also said, "And, Colt, this is Mel's sister, Cece." "Nice to meet you," I greeted. "Yeah, you too." He smiled in my direction, but his eyes were on my sister. He also seemed to like her jeans. Someone did not have manners. "Let's just go," Mel tried to rush. "Wait, Cece, can we talk for a minute?" Oliver asked. "Oh, sure." Fine, whatever, just hurry it up, Mel groaned, glancing at her guest. I was assuming she didn't want to be around him for too long. Oliver rolled his eyes at Mel and gently grabbed my hand. He pulled me into the kitchen out of earshot of the other two. I looked down at our hands. His were so big, and yet his touch was so gentle. My hand felt so warm in his, and when he let go I missed the feeling. So I just wanted to say I'm really sorry about what happened the other day. I should have been stricter with Mel. I shouldn't have let things get out of hand, Oliver said. I looked up at him, meeting his kind and sad eyes. Had he felt bad this whole time? Oh, don't worry about it. Mel is Mel. Not even Mom and Dad can keep her out of trouble, I told him with a small chuckle. I still didn't mean to cause trouble for you and your students. I know Mel won't apologize, but I am not okay with letting this go. I care about you, Cece, and the last thing I want to do is make things hard for you. My heart leapt in my chest. I knew what he had meant by that. We had all been together for so long. We were like family. Of course he cared about me. He cared about all of us. It doesn't make things hard for me. Don't worry. I would rather you guys come to me than handle it alone, I said. Well, someday I'll have to make this up to you, Oliver said softly. Oh my God, can we go? You left me alone in here with this creep, Mel shouted. Mel, that isn't nice. Don't shout things like that, I lectured, coming back out to meet them. Don't care. Let's go, Mel said. She didn't give me a chance to continue. She forced us all out of the house and into her SUV, and before we knew it, we were at her favorite club. The music beat loudly, and I could already feel a headache forming. Tonight was going to be a pain in the butt. Why do you like these places so much? I asked Mel as we waited in a short line to get in. It was a moonless, dark night, and even though it was warm out, I still had goosebumps. Why not? It's fun to dance, she shrugged. You! A female voice called to us. I turned to see a young woman, who I could only explain as a gypsy, pointing directly at me. Someone nearby is very interested in you. It's such a strong feeling I could sense it a mile away. Her eyes were a piercing green and they tore into me. She wasn't being aggressive. In fact, she spoke rather quietly, just loud enough that I could hear her. And she had the most voluminous, dark brown curls I had ever seen. Her skin was a glowing caramel gold color, and she dressed in a long skirt and crop top. It showed off her immaculate figure perfectly. She truly was a beauty, unmatched by anyone I had ever met, except maybe my sister. Who are you? I asked, taking a step towards her. Maybe if we meet again, I'll introduce myself. She lowered her hand, and all the gold bracelets she was wearing clinked together. Before I could take another step, she just melted away into the shadows. Who the hell was that? Mel asked. I have no idea. I shook my head and backed up, taking my place next to Oliver. We didn't say anything else about the mysterious woman, and before we knew it, the line was gone, and we were inside the loud, crowded club. Mel. I knew Cece didn't want to come out tonight, but I also knew she needed to unwind. Besides that, it was a great chance for Oliver to try break through the friend zone he had pushed himself into. Awesome, we're inside, I exclaimed excitedly, trying to make sure my voice carried over the music. I linked my arm with my sister's. This is going to be a lot of fun, I said, looking at Oliver. He was rubbing the back of his neck nervously, his long hair tied into a ponytail at the nape of his neck. I wondered what was going on in that head of his. Was he coming up with ways to get closer to her, or would he chicken out again? He was always so shy with her, and I never understood it. Cece was beautiful, but also really down to earth, and the two had a lot in common. I would probably have to play Cupid for a minute or two. I gently unhooked my arm from Cece's and shoved her into Oliver. He instinctively caught Cece by the shoulders and pulled her close. It almost made me laugh. He didn't even notice it. He just loved being close to her. Both of you stop being so stiff and boring. Dance and have a good time, I exclaimed, placing my hands on my hips as I glared at Oliver, trying to play it off that I was just annoyed with the two. Mel, don't push her like that. She could have fallen if I hadn't been here, he lectured before his face slowly started to get ridiculously red. He looked down at Cece's wide blue eyes and red cheeks. Well, there we go. Plan set in motion, I smirked to myself. Cece. For a moment, as Oliver held me, I was reminded of my childhood. I used to have the biggest crush on him in grade school, but he had never shown any interest, so I had learned to accept that him and I were ever only going to be friends. That was a long time ago. Still, I couldn't help but think of it with him this close to me. Maybe it was my imagination or the laser lights dancing around us, but as I looked up into his honey brown eyes, I thought for just a moment I saw something, a look of warmth and caring. "Excuse me, Miss Price," a voice called over, making Oliver and myself split. I knew my cheeks were red, but why? Oliver had never liked me in that way. I had accepted that when I was young. "Yes?" I turned towards the new voice, to find a very handsome gentleman. I could tell he was older than myself, but probably not by much. He had nicely groomed salt and pepper hair, a strong jawline, and dark eyes. He wasn't dressed for clubbing, and certainly didn't look the type to be in a place like this. He looked refined, chivalrous, and somewhat familiar. "Do I know you?" "We met once a few weeks ago at the hospital downtown. You were donating blood, and I introduced myself. I'm the newest doctor in town. I was hired that same day. My name is Noah Decker," he replied with a pearly white smile. "Oh yes, I remember. Call me Cece. So how are you liking the hospital?" I was a regular at that hospital. I donated blood every week. "It's wonderful. I was actually thinking about you. One of the nurses told me you donated all the time and that you were a teacher. I wondered what you would think about having a blood fair at the school. I know a lot of the kids are too young to donate, but I had a lot of ideas on just educating the children, and the ones that are old enough could donate if they wanted. It's good to increase awareness," he explained. I couldn't help but get excited. "That sounds like a wonderful idea. We would have to talk to the principal and the school board first, of course, but it would be so good for the children to be taught about donating blood and how it can save lives." Noah and I had moved closer together to be able to hear each other over the booming music. "I was thinking I could bring along blood type testing kits, and all the kids could learn their blood type," he continued eagerly. "We would need parents' permission, of course," I added. "We can hash out all the details later. I didn't mean to intrude on you and your friends. I just wanted to run the idea by, and then I saw you in the club. What a coincidence," he said after looking over my shoulder. I then remembered that I was there with 3 other people. I turned to find Mel and Oliver glaring daggers at Noah and myself. Why did I get so far away from them? I figured they were mad that I hadn't introduced them. "No, no, you aren't intruding. Come join us." I took Noah's hand and pulled him closer to my group. "Guys, this is Noah. He is the new doctor at the hospital. Noah, this is my sister, our best friend Oliver, and Colt." I gestured towards each of them in turn. Colt was the only one to shake Noah's hand. I elbowed my sister for being rude. I was starting to think that Colt had some manners after all. "Great, now there are 2 creeps." Mel rolled her eyes. "Mel," I warned. "It's nice to meet you all," Noah greeted over the music. Maybe he didn't hear what Mel said. "You too, man," Colt replied politely. I had to remember to tell my sister that I liked Colt. He was a very nice young man. In fact, he was the only one making an effort. What had gotten into them? Oliver usually had no problem making friends with people, but right now he wouldn't even look at us, let alone speak to us. As for Mel, she was just glaring and being insulting. I couldn't for the life of me figure out what their problems were. "So, aren't you a little young to be a doctor?" Mel asked rudely. "Not really. I'm 35. I went straight to college after high school. Took a little over 10 years to finish," he replied, either not noticing her rudeness or pretending to not notice. "Mel," I exclaimed, "how come you and Colt aren't dancing?" "Hey, that's a good point. We came here to have a good time, so let me show you a good time," Colt said with a wink. "I didn't even want you here. Oliver invited you just to piss me off," Mel yelled. "Aw, honey, you'll learn to love me." Colt wrapped an arm around Mel's waist and pulled her to the dance floor, with her fighting him the whole way. I turned to where Oliver had been standing and found that he had disappeared. I peered around to try and find his tall figure in the crowd with no luck. I sighed, exasperated. I had been abandoned. "I guess it's just you and me now." Noah caught my attention. "Would you care to dance?" He held out a hand in a way that reminded me of an old movie starring a prince and a princess. "Sure." I could feel my cheeks going bright red. Mel. What was going on? Why did I feel this way? Colt had a good hold on me, leading me away from the others. I did my best to look back, but all I saw was Cece and that strange man. Where had Oliver even gone? Was he really going to allow this? Something about that man, from the moment I looked at him, just didn't sit right. I could feel a heaviness in my chest, and my stomach was tied in knots. It was an uncomfortable feeling, and my body was tense. He led me away until I couldn't hear the two of them talking over the music. Just then my date, if you wanted to call him that, spun me around to face him. He pulled me close. I felt the heat radiating off of him. It might have been comforting if my mind wasn't somewhere else. "Colt, I don't have time for this," I hissed at him as I looked up. Our eyes met, and he pulled me even closer with a smirk on his lips. "Of course we have time for this. You should be worried about your own relationship and not your sister's." He winked at me again. I wish my eyes could have rolled all the way back in my head. "This is not a relationship. If anything, you're a stalker," I growled. Colt laughed at that as he reached up, brushing some of my hair behind my ear. We never broke eye contact. He was challenging me. At least that's what I told myself. But my heart betrayed me. It pounded hard and fast. I couldn't even hear the music anymore. It faded away into the background. All I could focus on was his dark eyes and his stupid, playful smile. I could feel myself relaxing in his grasp, but it didn't last long. I heard a group of annoying women squealing with glee just a few feet away from me. That was when my attention flickered to a familiar man surrounded by blushing skanks. What the hell was going on? What was Oliver doing? I pulled away from Colt and made my way through the crowd of people. Oliver sat at the bar with a simple coin in his hand. He flicked it between his fingers, and it rolled across his knuckles. He wore a confident smile, and his hair was a mess. His cheeks were a bright red as he chuckled softly. "Now pay close attention." He flipped the coin, and it busted into confetti in the air, causing the girls to cheer and clap with excitement. I rolled my eyes. He had gone off the deep end. It was clear he had had a few drinks before this little show began. The evidence was scattered around on the table beside him. I decided to call this version of my childhood friend Dark, Desperate Ollie. Cheesy, I know, but it was kind of true. In this moment he shined, and sadly it was only because he was drunk. He had thrown all his cares and worries out the window. "If you thought that was great, just you wait," he laughed, snapping his fingers as a single blue rose appeared. He balanced it on the tip of his index finger before he held it out to one of the dumb bimbos. She took it, her cheeks red, and her eyes seemed to sparkle. It made me want to puke. He reminded me too much of the other creeps here. So am I crazy, or is that Oliver?" Colt asked, beside me. Of course he followed. I wasn't surprised at all. "Yep, that is Oliver," I assured him. "Wow," was Colt's only response. Oliver was a wonderful magician. He had been into that kind of stuff since we were kids, but he never really did shows like this. This was all influenced by my sister. He was feeling empty and depressed by her sudden interest in an older weirdo. Now we were going to be dealing with his emotional roller coaster while he was drunk. Great! One after another, Oliver performed trick after trick. They ranged from disappearing coins to igniting random flames from the fingertips. He was convincing, and the girls were eating up his charming smile. But all things have to come to an end, and by God, I was happy to intrude. Oliver had his arm around one of the girls, whispering something into her ear. Little did he know I held my hand out, summoning up my inner strength. I imagined something crawling along the girl's leg. The moment she felt it, she looked down and screamed, seeing a spider there before her. She smacked at her leg and took off through the crowd. This broke up the little party as the other girls were concerned, slowly backing away. Oliver looked up and met my angry gaze. His eyes widened, and I took a step forward. He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't give him much time. I slapped him, making sure to leave a nice red handprint on his cheek. "What are you, stupid?" I barked at him. He said nothing, looking down and slowly reaching up to touch his own cheek. I hope it hurt. "Do you honestly think she would want you if she saw this? You look like an idiot and a womanizer." I knew he was not in the right frame of mind, and I had to snap it out of it. Oliver was silent, still holding his cheeks as his eyes darted away. He was trying to run away from my glare. I could see the red spreading across his cheeks and to his ears. It almost matched his hair. He was obviously embarrassed. He should be. He looked like an idiot. "I was just trying to relax and not think," he mumbled. "So you believe drinking and acting like a pervert will make it all better?" I asked bitterly. "Obviously no, but I just wanted to try," and I cut him off by raising my hand. I didn't want to hear it. "There are other ways of dealing with this, Ollie. Stop being stupid," I hissed. I don't know what to do. She obviously likes someone else. I can't get in the way. She made it clear that I'm just her friend," he defended. "See, Oliver, that's your problem. You're always backing off or shying away. You had your chance and you let it pass you by. You can't blame her for assuming that you just wanted to be friends," I said, trying to calm down. He already felt foolish. "I don't blame her, Mel," he said, looking at me again as he slowly stood up. I sighed as he moved past me. We could both see Cece and the stranger from here. They had gone from dancing to sitting in a booth talking. Cece had the biggest, most beautiful smile on her face, and I knew it was killing Oliver. He cared for her so much. "I just want to go home. I'll see you later." Before I could stop him, he had disappeared into the crowd of people. What else could I say to him at this point? He just wasn't in the mood to listen. "So that was really Oliver?" Colt asked, and I looked to him. "Yes, duh. Is it that hard to believe?" I asked. "It's just different from the shy guy I'm used to seeing," he said. "Yeah, I know, right? He doesn't normally drink, but the guy is great at magic. He just lacks confidence when it comes to Cece," I said, rolling my eyes. "So, I'm guessing he likes your sister?" he asked. I raised an eyebrow and looked at him. "Yeah, isn't it obvious? Why do you care?" "I'm just relieved. Now I don't have to feel bad for stealing you from him," he said with a grin. "Oh my God, knock it off. Me and Oliver? That's gross. He's like an annoying brother," I said, shoving him lightly with my shoulder before turning away. "I'm just saying, I didn't want any drama, but I would have dealt with it to get my hands on you." "Also, what did you do to that girl?" he replied, catching up to me. "What? Nothing," I said quickly, too quickly. "You can't lie to me. I can sense magic. I'm a warlock," he whispered in my ear. "Really? What coven do you belong to?" I asked, surprised. There were many covens, but each coven had its own territory. This town and a few smaller towns surrounding it were claimed by my coven, or more accurately, my parents' coven. My mother, Denise Price, was Pathfinder. A Pathfinder is like the leader of the coven, but only those who have some sort of clairvoyant gift can become a Pathfinder. They are meant to lead our coven down the right and best path. Every Wiccan family in our area was in our coven, plus a few stragglers here and there. The heads of every family gather every few months to discuss things and do whatever else they do. I wasn't the head of the family, so I had never been to one. My mother, Lisa Collins, and I are part of the Silver Lake Coven. Your coven," he laughed. "I've never had the pleasure of meeting your parents. I wasn't sure until now if you were actually the daughter of the Pathfinder or just had the same last name. So what is your gift?" "I can make a person see whatever I want them to see. Only one person at a time, though," I shared, surprised that we were in the same coven. "What about you?" "I can talk to animals." "Oh, well, I didn't expect that." I guess we are both surprised tonight. "I didn't know Oliver could be such a smooth drunk," he smirked at me. I sighed and rolled my eyes. I looked out into the crowd of people. I was worried about Oliver. He was still tipsy, and I wasn't sure he should be walking home alone. "If you were worried about him, I can go catch up and make sure he gets back safe," Colt offered. I looked to him. "What? Why would you do that?" "He's someone you care about, so I should care too, right? Besides, he's not so bad. He did invite me out." "Don't worry about it," I mumbled, though I couldn't deny that it was rather thoughtful of him to check on Oliver for me. He didn't know me well, and I wasn't exactly being nice to him either. "Too late. I'm going," he said. He then began moving through the crowd to catch up to Oliver. He couldn't have been too far. The place was pretty crowded tonight, and he was tipsy. He'd be moving slow for sure. I sighed softly. I would have to thank Colt for this someday, and maybe I'd admit he wasn't as much of a creep as I thought. Colt. I pushed through crammed, dancing bodies. The music pounded in my ears until I made it to the exit of the club. I could tell Mel was worried, and Oliver was probably a little too drunk to be walking home by himself. I stood on the sidewalk, checking to see which road he had gone down. "Hey, Oliver!" I ran to the right, seeing him around a corner. "What? Shouldn't you be in there dancing with Mel?" he asked, stopping so I could catch up. "She's worried about you, man. So I'm going to make sure you get home without dying." I smirked. This was the first time I had ever escorted anyone home before. Usually it was someone escorting me. Oliver rolled his light brown eyes at me. "I'm perfectly fine. As soon as the words left his mouth, he stumbled off the sidewalk and into the road. I grabbed his shirt and jerked him back over. Oliver was built like a damn tank. I would have a major issue if he passed out, because there was no way I would be able to carry him. I was tall and lean, definitely did not enjoy mass weight training like he obviously did. Yep, you seem totally fine, I said sarcastically. Where do you live? We need to get you home before you collapse. This way. I agree that I need to get home. I feel like I'm going to get sick. Oliver led the way, swaying a bit. You better not. My niceness only goes so far. I will not hold your long-ass hair while you throw up all over the place. Why are you helping me at all? He asked. Because Mel was clearly worried. Plus, you seem like an okay guy. I know you think Mel is attractive, but you barely spend any time with her. Why do you care if she's worried? Oliver stumbled again, but regained his footing before I had to intervene. Well, I thought for a moment. What was it about Mel that drew me in so much? She was beautiful, sure, but it was easy to see how much she cared about people, especially her sister and friends, even though she put on a tough act. I can see what kind of person she really is beneath the bitchy veneer. Maybe she acts like that to protect herself. I'm not sure, but I'd like to find out. I want to know her better. Oliver shook his head in response. That's pretty accurate, actually. He stopped and turned to face me. Here, let me give you her number. I jumped on the opportunity, handing him my phone. He punched in the information and I smirked. I would definitely use that. He handed me back my phone. Thanks, man. Yeah, she's gonna kill me for that, but whatever. He shrugged. So, what's going on with you and Cece? I asked abruptly. I hadn't wanted to pry, but since we were having a bonding moment, I figured why not. Nothing. She's just my best friend. Even with the light of the moon guiding us, I could see his cheeks redden. Whatever. Spill it, I demanded. He stayed silent for a few minutes as we walked. I've known Cece and Mel since we were kids. Cece is amazing. I care about her, but the feeling seems to be one-sided, he finally shared reluctantly. Man up. Tell her how you feel. Chicks dig big, beefy guys like you. Plus, you already had the advantage of knowing everything about her. Don't settle for the friend zone, I tried to encourage. That's not how it works. Oliver stopped in front of a little house. It looked old, but recently renovated. Well, this is home. Thanks. You can let Mel know she doesn't have to worry. Weird. You only live a few blocks away from me, I noticed. Huh. How have we never met? It's not like Kingsland is huge or anything. Shouldn't we have seen you in school growing up or something? Depends. How old are you guys anyway? I asked. They seemed close to my age. Cece and Mel are 24. I'm 25. That explains it, I answered. I just turned 29, so when you guys were starting high school, I had just graduated. Oh, makes sense. Guess I'll see you later. He went inside, and I started towards my home. It was getting chilly out, and I noticed the nocturnal animals stayed in their hidey holes. They had a bad feeling tonight. Cece, so you're telling me white is your favorite color? That's very unique, Noah teased. Unique? You make it sound like a bad thing. I laughed. We had been having a wonderful time. Apparently everyone else had been too. Oliver performed magic and flirted with a bunch of girls, which was so weird. He may look like a big, buff womanizer, but he had never acted like one. He never flirted or led women on, not before anyway. He was always shy, sweet, and a little dorky. On the other hand, Mel got to dancing, just like she wanted, and Colt seemed to have enjoyed that. I always kept an eye on them just to be safe. They had a knack for getting into trouble. Overall, I hoped everyone had had a good time. I noticed that Oliver went home first, which was probably for the best. He looked upset about something. Then Colt followed Oliver out. I would have to call him once I left to make sure he was all right. It's not a bad thing. It's just not one I've heard much. Are you saying you've asked a lot of women their favorite color? I teased. Not like that, Noah defended. But most people seem to like reds, blues, or purples. Or in other words, actual colors. He said it jokingly, and I couldn't help but laugh with him. His smile was contagious. Or maybe 2 drinks were too many. I didn't drink often. Well, actually, I never drank. Well, I've had a lot of fun getting to know you tonight, but my sister is coming to steal me away, I think. I nodded towards Mel as she pushed through the crowd. It's probably time to go home anyway. Wait, here. Noah grabbed a pen out of his pocket and jotted something down on his napkin. "What are you doing Sunday night?" he asked, handing me a napkin with his number written on it. "I don't think I'm doing anything. Why? Would you like to go out to dinner?" His black eyes showed his confidence. "That sounds lovely." I felt my cheeks redden. "I'll pick you up at your place around 7. You can text me your address?" "Cece, are you ready?" Mel grabbed my wrist without waiting for an answer. "Yes, Mel." I rolled my eyes. Noah walked out with us and even opened the car door for me. I was stunned by how sweet this man was. He had been so easy to talk to. He listened to the things I said with real interest and was such a gentleman. "Goodbye. Thanks for the wonderful night." I gave Noah a light hug before slipping into the car. He shut my door with a goodbye of his own, and then Mel sped off, leaving him literally in the dust. She was going to get a talking to about manners when we got home. When we finally made it home, I stopped Mel just inside the door. "Hey, I agreed to go out with Noah Sunday, so be nice." "Ew, no." Her phone rang, and she stomped off before I could scold her. I rolled my eyes, pulling out my own phone. I had one last order of business to deal with. I dialed Oliver's number and waited. I wanted to make sure he had made it home safe. Unfortunately, it rang once and then went to voicemail. Well, that wasn't good. I dialed Oliver's home phone this time. Maybe his dad was still awake. "Hello?" a dull voice answered after a few rings. "Hey, Mr. Carver, it's Cece. Have you seen Oliver? He left us early tonight, and I just wanted to make sure he had gotten home safe." "Yeah, he went up to his room a little while ago. I can yell for him if you want." No, thank you. I just wanted to make sure he was safe." "Have a good night," I answered. "Good night, Cece." He hung up.